Ahí se ve.
Ok.
Bueno, voy a hacer la presentación en inglés. Que Dios nos ayude. Bueno, the paper, Rethinking Hurtado's observation with crossover effect across clitic doubling pattern in Rio Platense, Spanish. I will try to be brief, okay? Short presentation, just a problem and a solution. Okay. Okay, what is with crossover? As you know, do you see the complete PowerPoint now? Because I see your faces in the middle of my PowerPoint. Can you see okay? I mean,
Yes.
You see,
let's start with standard weak crossover
configuration. Thank you,
yeah.
Paco. This is a standard weak crossover configuration. We have, for instance, an A-bar extraction with a WH element crossing pronoun. And what is crossing here, I will use my pen. Do you see my pencil, my virtual pencil?
Yep.
This is beautiful. Okay. This is weak crossover, right? We have a possessive pronoun in a particular position. If you change this su by un or su madre by she, then you have a strong crossover, right? That's the difference between weak and strong. Okay, so this is the abstract configuration for weak crossover, assuming that this is a possessive inside a DP, right? As I said before, if you have here like she, then you have a strong crossover. Okay. A very, very, very standard account of weak crossover in the 80s was the so-called dissection principle by Koopman and Sportisch during the years in which LF is starting to have a lot of prominence in the model, right? And one observation by Koopman and Sportisch was that, well, see, maybe what we call variables in syntax or LF are different, what have some particular properties when compared to variables in logic, for instance, right? For instance, for them, variables in syntax and LF must respect a bijection principle. We say that there is a bijective correspondence between variables and A-bar position in less mathematical terms. This is the standard formulation. Every variable is locally bound by one and only one A-bar position, and every A-bar position locally binds one and only one A position, right? And this is it's easy to see now that the sentence "a quien criticó su madre," who did his mother criticize, doesn't respect the bijection principle because you have this operator binding two variables in a position. Now, Koopman and Sportisch, one clarification is in order here. It's important to have in mind that this X here are not doesn't correspond necessarily to traces or particular abstract object. Indeed, Koopman and Sportisch noticed, as Chomsky did, that clitics or traces of intermediate traces does not respect bijection, right? And as for Spanish, we owe to Alfredo Hurtado, an Argentinian linguist, the important observation that clitic doublings of various kinds in Spanish obviate weak crossover effects. The importance of Hurtado's observation had to do with the fact that for him, and this is correct, both clitic left dislocation, see, this is a clitic left dislocation construction with an indefinite, not the best one, but this is original example. And Rio Platense clitic doubling obviates weak crossover. Su cómplice lo acusó a Juan. That's the substantive part of Hurtado observation, because as I said before, Chomsky, also Koopman and Sportisch, noticed that clitic construction can obviate weak crossover, okay? And the observation is is the following, right? Predication clitic change escape crossover effects. This is a literal quote of Hurtado's paper. Okay. What is a predication clitic chain? That's an idea by Chomsky. A predicate clitic chain is formed when a sentence is opened by a clitic and its associated empty position, and the dislocated element serves as the subject of such an open sentence. So Chomsky's idea, which I think that is correct as usual with Chomsky, is that this clitic here is basically an abstractor which creates a predicate with this XP, the doubling, or the dislocated element, serving as a subject. Okay. So how does this account explain the obviation effects? Well, Chomsky's idea was that predication, the predication rule, this predication rule that I mentioned before, applies after LF. If you remember, Chomsky proposed in the 70s, in 2 papers, that there are 2 steps of LF derivation, what he calls LF and what then he calls LF prime. In LF prime, you calculate presuppositions, some sort of pragmatic inferences, and also some sort of subject and predicate relations. That is LF2. And this predication rule, which basically is a co-indexation rule, applies after LF. But crucially, the rejection principle applies at LF. Then when you have this input for the predication rule, the rejection principle here is okay, right? Why is okay? Because the clitic and the empty position it pins has a different index than the possessive pronoun, right? So this is in accordance, you see, with the rejection principle. After LF, then you apply the predication rule and you obtain this clitic change, which is co-indexed with SU, but now this is irrelevant because the rejection principle was calculated before. Okay. So according to Hurtado, it has to be the case that in all the relevant cases of weak crossover obviation in clitic structures, the nominal associated with the clitic is in a particular A-bar position, which he calls external non-argumental position, probably a type of base-generated peripheral position. The direct consequence of this approach is that all clitic doubling configurations must have the doubling nominal in the same A-bar position as dislocated topics. So, in a nutshell, Hurtado position is that all clitic configurations in Rio Platense Spanish are form A-bar change, similar to dislocated positions. Okay, and this is, as I say, grounded in the weak crossover effects that we observe. So the plan for today is very easy because we don't have too much time. So first I will argue that the observation is only partially correct. There are cases in which a predicate clitic chain cannot obviate weak crossover, and that on the basis of this, the double nominal of a clitic doubling sentence and the dislocated topic of a clitic less dislocation construction cannot be conceived of in the same way. Specifically, I will show you that whereas clitic doubling triggers a movement to the double nominal, clitic less dislocation constructions correspond to an uniform A-bar change, right? This is a type of the base sentence that we have to have in mind. I will, if you remember, let me go to Hurtado original example. There is a problem with this example. Su cómplice lo acusó a Juan. Not every Rioplatense Spanish speaker accepts this sentence because this sentence has a sort of cataphoric effect, right? Where you have the focus in situ and the clitic, and the possessive to the right. And this sort of an cataphoric relation for some speakers introduce some further complication when we try to calculate weak crossover effect. For this reason, Angela Di Tullio, Pablo Drodiecki, and I use this type of sentences. Focus fronting, like you see here, amarilla, with clitic doubling or without clitic doubling. That's optional. Amarilla critique ayer or amarilla la critique ayer. That's perfect. And we are going to compare these two types of sentences with and without the clitic with a standard case of clitic left dislocation. You have the hiatus here, and then you have the clitic, which in this case is obligatory. This is the type of sentences we are going to work. Okay, when you compare the three types of sentences, all these patterns arise. There are a lot of tests or diagnostics to set apart each construction. I will only focus, of course, in this aspect. If you are interested in these ones, in these guys, then I can send you the stuff. Yesterday, Juan Jose talked a little about focus set diagnostics, subject inversion, and DOM dependency, etc. Perfect. But we are going to contrast only clitic doubling plus focus fronting, which improves weak crossover, but with some restriction. And then we are going to compare this weak crossover amelioration with clitic left dislocation, which is without restriction, okay, without any restriction. That's interesting. So this is the restriction. Sorry, this is the clitic left dislocation pattern, in which you can see that the weak crossover is always suspended, regardless of the position of the possessive. So if you have an embedded clause, then you can put the possessive in the main clause or in the subordinated clause, and the effect is always the same. No weak crossover effect. For instance, a Juan, su profesor cree que lo criticó María. Perfect. You can have a co-reference between su and Juan. And the same, of course, if you have the possessive in the embedded clause. You have the possessive here, then you have the clitic here, and then you have Juan here, and this is perfect. When it comes to focus fronting plus clitic doubling, then we observe the restriction. The position of the possessive is crucial, right? Is crucial. If the possessive is in the embedded, in the matrix clause, like here, then we obtain a weak crossover effect again. Whereas if the clitics, if the possessive is in the embedded clause, then no weak crossover effect. So this is a super robust judgment and a clear contrast with clitic left dislocation, right? Now, when it comes to bare focus fronting, without clitic, then you have weak crossover as in the simple cases, right? A Juan cree su profesor que criticó María is bad with the possessive here, and it's also bad with the possessive in the embedded clause, okay? So that's a pattern. This is accusative clitic doubling. When it comes to dative clitic doubling, it's the same with the advantage that we can check also double H extraction, which is bad with accusative doubling, but is good with dative. So if you have a clitic extraction, a double H extraction with a dative, then you can observe, like in A, aquel le entregó a su profesor, that we don't have weak crossover effect. If you don't have the clitic here, which is possible for some speakers, then weak crossover reappear. And the same with focus in B. If we use the test of embedding, then we had exactly the same pattern that we have with accusative doubling. ¿A quién cree su madre que le entregó el libro Juan? We crossover effects in the metric clause. If you put the possessive in the embedded clause, then no we crossover effects. Okay? Good. Yeah. Okay. What is it? Okay. Verb focus, double H fronting with datives, always with crossover, as we observe also with respect with accusative doubling. So that's the point. That's, you now understand what I meant when I talk about restrictions. The position of the possessive is crucial in doubling, not in clitic left dislocation. That's the thing we have to explain. So in some clitic doubling repairs, we cross over only if the possessive in the subject is crossed in the same clause as the clitic. Clitic left dislocation instead is always immune to we crossover. And that's something nice that we have to explain. And here's the proposal. The proposal is the doubling clitic act as proof for a movement. Whereas clitic in argument position, this means clitics in cases of clitic left dislocation, but clitics in argument position in general are variables. So we have two types of objects. This is the new part of it, the original part of the proposal, if you want. Yeah? You have variables. What is a variable? It's a D-clitic with a set of 5 features, blah, blah, blah. I will not enter into details of if the features are interpretable or not, blah, blah. I assume that they are in the case of clitics in argument position, and then you have an index. I will explain the index in a second. When it comes to clitics in non-argument position, they act as proofs. What is a proof? It's a set of unvalued features plus an index in some cases. That's the difference. What is the cause of the difference? Well, it's a diachronic process of impoverishment. Normal. This happens in language evolution, right? So this is when you have a variable in argument position, what you have is an index and then an assignment function. This is a standard, right? So let's suppose the pronoun she is just an index, which is basically a function from a natural number to an individual. Okay, perfect. This is a variable. Of course, this variable can be bound also. But this is a clitic. This is a clitic in non-argument position. For instance, as a sister of boys. What happened with these guys in non-argument position? Well, this is still an index. And an index which, an index showing to an expletive position or a non-argument position is, as I said, caused because a process of functionalization or grammaticalization of the clitic. This arrow here indicates the process of diachronic change. This is what happened in Rio Platense Spanish with clitic doubling. Now, a clitic in non-argumental position triggers predicate abstraction at the left. No discussion about this, right? If you have an index in an expletive position, then the index opens the sentence. The index opens the sentence. So let's assume that a standard version of the grid theory. The grid theory in Chomsky 2001 is an asymmetric relation which consists of a proof. This proof has a set of unvalued features. This unvalued feature has to be valued. Then the proof looks for a goal with valued features in its complement domain. And if it finds such goal, then value the unvalued feature. It could be the case, Chomsky argues, that this head has a diacritic, which he calls EPP feature. And then if it is the case, this is an instruction to move the goal to this position, right? This is a grid plus math movement model. This is exactly what happened with clitic. This is a clitic in non-argument position, very similar to the original position in Sportish, according to whom there are clitic position in syntax. The clitic here has
Andrés, 5 minutes.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Perfect. Valued by a grid, 5 features, and then it has the index. And the index opens the sentence. How? In this way, you have this is the clitic, right? The index is an instruction to open void phrase, and this is what happened. And then, as Chomsky says, the doublet object acts as a subject. Well, the first advantage compared with other alternatives in the literature is that we dispense directly with the following stipulation, according to which in a movement structure formed by a grid for 5 features, assign a node lambda to the probing head. This is the same stipulation you can find in handbook like a Hennig-Glatzer, right? You need an extra operation of lambda attaching. This is not the case in the present theory because the lambda abstractor, this here, is the clitic itself. Okay. So this is how this account explains with absence of weak crossover in the case of clitic doubling plus flocus. Well, weak crossover follows from a scope. This is a very known and very standard account of weak crossover nowadays. What is a scope account of weak crossover? It's very easy. You have here the trace, you see. Then you have the possessive, which is an individual variable. And a movement, as I explained, abstracts over individuals, because the clitic is an is an index attached to as a system of void phrase. What happens when you don't have clitic doubling, a Maria crítico su padre? Well, what happened here is that the movement is not a movement, it's a bar movement. A bar movement, according to many approaches to weak crossover, does not abstract over individuals, abstracts over choice functions, and this choice function, of course, cannot bind this individual variable, and then you cannot get the coreference between the dislocated element and the possessive. This explains in a very nice way why the position of the possessive is important, right? According to this analysis, when you have long extraction, the clitic doubling, only the first step of movement is movement of the A type, right? So when you have a possessive far from the clitic position, then weak crossover reappear, right? Why? Because we have here a movement, perfect. But then the following step of movement is a bar. An a bar movement abstracts over choice function, and then you get weak crossover effects. It doesn't happen with clitic left dislocation, because clitic left dislocation is a bar movement, or a bar dislocation, or a bar extraction, as you want. And uniformly, this type of dislocation act over an individual variable, which is the clitic itself, right? And as Carlos Arrey has shown several years ago, in left dislocation, the clitic is interpreted as an individual variable, and but this is not a claim in Arrey, as claiming now, and the dislocated topic abstracts always over individual variables. That is why with clitic left dislocation you never have weak crossover effect. regardless of the position of the possessive. Conclusion, a fresh look to weak crossover across clitic duplication pattern leads us to conclude that doubling clitics are not variables. This is indexes interpreted under some assignment function, but predicate abstractors. Clitics in left location are regular individual variables. Finally, I want to say that in a sense, doubling clitics are a step forward from an evolutive point of view, a conclusion in consonance with the late emergence of doubling clitics in the history of Spanish. Muchas gracias.
Perfeito. Parabéns, Andrés, no tempo exato. Some questions, any questions, comments? Michelle?
Thanks. It was a really great talk. It's actually the second time I've heard your talk, and I actually understood it this time. The first time it was a bit too, it's kind of good to hear stuff a second time sometimes. I think it's very compelling and very neat. And yeah, this extra intermediate step of a movement being the relevant thing. I wondered about limiting where you can always have critic doubling in real potential Spanish of like a specific, or it's quite free, isn't it? When you can, I mean, it's semantically constrained, like a DOM type, but you can always double kind of specific animate direct objects, right? Or is it more restricted?
Yeah, it depends on the on case. I mean, dative doubling is free, but accusative clitic doubling depends on various factors. The different, productive clitic doubling is only with definite repeats.
Yeah.
But it's also extending, and it's being attested productively also with specific indefinites.
Okay, I'm just wondering about limiting it, because it's a very attractive idea, but how do you kind of sort of stop critic doubling from happening in places where it shouldn't, if it's got such kind of, useful function? And does it? I mean, I know sometimes you do, like your work on causatives, you have shown that you do sometimes double inanimate things, right? Is that connected, where you kind of have to move it, and so you get critic doubling, or is that something different?
With inanimates?
Yeah, because you have those cases, don't you, with causatives?
Yeah, you have cases of DOM inanimates and some doublings with inanimates, but the diagnostics I put in this chart here are not transparent. I mean, for me, in doubling of inanimate, we are in a process of marginalization in the sense of cardinalities. So it's a type of right dislocation. Okay. I think.
So do the because I was going to ask you.
Sorry, here you see the chart.
Yeah.
If you apply the test here with inanimates, it's not clear. It's not clear. I'm not saying, I'm not sure. It's not clear that the indefinite is part of the focus set.
Okay. And what about with causatives? Do you get the same? Can you get rid of the weak in the same way?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, nice. Okay.
That's the question I did in one of your presentation. If you have a causative construction, then you get a weak crossover amelioration. So for instance, Juan, María la hizo saltar su madre. Mary made her mother jump. You get weak crossover improvement, and this is for me a clear diagnostic that the causative move, a move outside the causative.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Perguntas?
I could also ask you then about, if there's no other questions, about critic left dislocation, and do you just adopt Hurtado's view of that then, that it's base generate, that the critic left dislocated DPs are base generated?
Sorry, I didn't see. I don't have any commitment as far as how we get the dislocation. I must say, because you know, this theory of weak crossover is the theory in Rice or Van Hulk. Van Hulk, for instance, say that uniformly A-bar extraction abstracts over choice functions. And he uses data from A-bar topic in English. But topicalization in English is more like to focus fronting in Spanish, right? So, and he says, okay, so we crossover with clitic left sorry, let me put it this way. For him, all type of A-bar extraction abstracts over choice function. And I claim here that this is not confirmed with respect to clitic left dislocation. I'm saying you can have topic movement with abstraction over individuals. And if you have A-bar movement with abstraction over individuals, then you don't have weak crossover effect. And this is what happened with clitic left dislocation. But the alternative is just saying that the topic is base generated. And then you can apply Chomsky predication rule or whatever, which is very similar to I did here, and then you get the same result. See? I don't know if I answer your question. I don't know, because it's true that Van Hulk also proposed that there are hybrid proofs with A-bar and A-bar properties. So it could be, for instance, that in clitic left dislocation we have a hybrid probe with A and A-bar properties. So in that case, I think that his claim stands. I don't know. What do you think about clitic left dislocation? The topic move, or I don't know. I never found a good argument for one theory or another one or another theory.
Kind of mixed properties.
Yeah, I like this that possibility. Yeah. But what is clear is that clitic left dislocation is always immune to weak crossover, and that thing is it's a new observation, because if you check the Spanish literature, they use weak crossover, absence of weak crossover, as a robust diagnostic for a movement, and that's not correct. I mean, that's incorrect. You have really to check. You have to play with the position of the possessive, I think.
Pueden verlo, ¿no?
Sí.
Sí, sí. Bueno, yo presentaré la introducción y lo haré en español y Samara, no sé, lo hará en español o en portugués. Básicamente este es un trabajo que iniciamos en el que estamos trabajando sobre los clíticos, la interacción con marcado diferencial de objeto y elipsis, basado en un trabajo previo que hice con Sonia Cirino. Pero aquí nos centramos más que nada en el aspecto experimental, más que teórico, de lo que dijimos en aquel artículo, y Samara ha sido la principal constructora la única constructora del aspecto experimental que vamos a presentar. El problema de investigación es el siguiente. En un estudio comparativo sobre los objetos nulos que hice con Sonia Cirino en 2018 y el español, observamos que hay ciertos paralelismos entre las interpretaciones de los objetos nulos en el portugués brasilero y las posibles interpretaciones de los clíticos en lenguas como el español. Sonia, que ya ha estado argumentando durante muchos años, ha argumentado claramente a favor de la idea de que los objetos nulos en portugués brasilero son un ejemplo de elipsis. Uno de los argumentos, entre otros, es el hecho de que los objetos nulos en portugués brasilero admiten dos lecturas, la lectura estricta o la lectura imprecisa, strict, and in English sloppy, lectura de los objetos nulos. O Pedro escondeu seu dinheiro no armário, mas seu amigo gastou na feira. El dinero que gastó su amigo puede ser el dinero de Pedro, lectura estricta, o puede ser el dinero de su amigo, que sería la lectura imprecisa. Kerr y Rosselló, en un artículo de 2013 muy interesante, observan que la misma doble interpretación se puede dar con los clíticos en catalán. Y ya veremos que hay algunas diferencias entre el catalán y el español. Pero aquí reproducimos los datos en español y en el siguiente ejemplo vemos que el caso del clítico puede ser interpretado como lectura estricta o con lectura imprecisas. O María vio su carro y Juan también lo vio. Puede ser que Juan vio el carro de María, estricta, o Juan vio el carro de Juan, que sería la lectura imprecisa. Bien, nuestro trabajo, además de indicar esta opción, comparó estos casos con los casos de elipsis de sintagma tiempo en español, es decir, aquellos que no hay clítico. Tenemos una elipsis en el sintagma tiempo en español, como María vio su carro y Juan también. Aquí no hay ni clítico ni verbo. Y vemos que las dos lecturas son también posibles. La lectura estricta es que Juan vio el carro de María y la lectura imprecisa es que Juan vio el carro de Juan. Por aquí no hay ningún tipo de aspecto sorprendente sobre estos datos, de que hay un paralelismo entre lo que ocurre con el clítico y lo que ocurre con elipsis de sintagma tiempo. Para dar cuenta de este paralelismo, propusimos que debería haber una explicación común en el cual hay una estructura elidida en los dos casos que contienen, que pueda dar cuenta de la doble interpretación del posesivo, en este caso su carro, en un caso como el otro. Y para ello habíamos asumido que en el caso de elipsis de sintagma tiempo no hay ninguna sorpresa. Suponemos que hay un sintagma de tiempo eledido, contiene el verbo y el posesivo y el nombre. Y lo que asumimos con Kerr y Rosselló es que en el caso del clítico también asumimos que hay un sintagma determinante con un posesivo eledido, que no oímos. O María vio su carro y Juan también lo vio, su carro. Esta es la idea que hay. Bien, lo que resultó curioso de ese trabajo fue que nos percatamos, y Sirino lo hizo al principio del trabajo, de trabajar las diferencias entre cómo la animacidad influye en la distribución de objetos nulos en portugués brasilero. Y lo que notamos es que en el caso de los elipsión con clíticos, también la animacidad juega un papel. Pero la animacidad, contrariamente al portugués brasilero, en español sí que se codifica hasta cierto punto. Ya vemos que esto es un aspecto bastante controvertido del español, con el marcado diferencial de objetos. En español tenemos que con objetos animados marcamos como en 6 el objeto con una preposición. Es decir, Juan vio a su amigo, no decimos vio a su amigo, opuesto a Juan vio su carro. Entonces ahí hay una diferencia. Y utilizamos el test para ver si habría algún tipo, como ya hemos visto anteriormente con inanimados, las dos lecturas estricta y imprecisa son posibles. En ese artículo nos percatamos de que si bien las dos lecturas son precisas con animados, era más difícil encontrar una lectura imprecisa. Cuando decimos Mario vio a su amigo y Juan también lo vio, era mucho más claro en mis intuiciones que la lectura imprecisa se hace mucho más difícil que en el caso anterior, que cuando tenemos un animado. Esto lleva, eso contrasta con los casos de elipsis de sintagma tiempo, en el cual no notábamos que hubiese ningún tipo de diferencia. Es decir, que tanto la lectura estricta como imprecisa no eran tan difíciles, sobre todo la lectura imprecisa, no era tan difícil de obtener con casos de elipsis de sintagma tiempo, pero sí con los casos del clínico. Eso nos lleva a la parte experimental, que es la que va a presentar Samara, sobre el experimento que hicimos para corroborar los datos que he presentado hasta ahora. Samara.
Sí, aquí estoy, lista.
Buenas tardes. Me dices cuando paso diapositiva.
Sí. Ajá, gracias. Buenas tardes. Antes que nada, quisiera decir que es un gusto estar entre colegas y amigos de Romania Nova una vez más. Bueno, ahora pasamos al estudio experimental que hicimos con Paco, como se podría decir en Río Platense. El estudio que hicimos con Paco. Puedes pasar, Paco. Bueno, tomando en cuenta el problema de investigación, la pregunta es, ¿el rasgo de animosidad es relevante para la obtención de lectura imprecisa? La hipótesis, nuestra hipótesis, el rasgo más animado bloquea la obtención de lectura imprecisa en la elipsis de DP con el clítico, pero no en la elipsis de TP. Por favor, Paco. Entonces, lo que hicimos fue un cuestionario experimental distribuido en Qualtrics. La tarea fue un test de elección forzada. Por favor, Paco. Método, participantes. 36 hablantes nativos de español, 12 de Buenos Aires, 12 de Ciudad de México y 12 de Madrid. El perfil era mayores de 18 años, no eran bilingües de lenguas románicas, no habían estudiado la carrera de letras o lingüística. Por favor. Material. 4 conjuntos con 16 oraciones experimentales, 4 para cada condición experimental y 32 distractores. Variables independientes, dialecto, crítico y animosidad. Variables dependientes, lectura estricta, lectura imprecisa, lectura bold. Condiciones experimentales, oraciones sin crítico con referente más animado, oraciones sin crítico con referente menos animado, oraciones con crítico con referente más animado y oraciones con crítico con referente menos animado. Se evitaron oraciones como Juan recibió su sueldo y Pedro también lo recibió, también lo recibió por cuestiones pragmáticas. Por favor, Paco. El diseño experimental, distribución en cuadrado latino con diseño within subjects. Los estímulos y las opciones de respuesta fueron aleatorizados. Por favor. Procedimiento, los participantes recibían información básica, pero no específica sobre el estudio, de acuerdo con el protocolo ético, así como instrucciones. Antes de empezar, contestaban preguntas de elección múltiple sobre dialecto, edad, perfil lingüístico, si bilingüe en español y otra lengua románica, y carrera académica, letras o lingüística. Si no se cumplían los requisitos, el cuestionario se cerraba automáticamente. Por favor, Paco. El participante lee una oración declarativa seguida de una pregunta y señalaba una respuesta. Carmen curó a sus pacientes y José también. ¿A quiénes curó José? A las pacientes de Carmen sería lectura estricta, a sus propias pacientes lectura imprecisa, a las pacientes de los dos sería una categoría both. Paco. Resultados. Obtuvimos 576 respuestas, 44 respuestas both, 193 respuestas sloppy, lectura imprecisa, 339 respuestas strict, lectura estricta. Por favor, Paco. Paco. Gracias. Gracias. En el análisis exploratorio ejecutamos una prueba de chi cuadrado y la distribución de frecuencia de respuesta por dialecto no es estadísticamente relevante, así que no se puede rechazar la hipótesis nula. En cambio, las variables independiente clítico y animosidad sí son relevantes estadísticamente, así que podemos rechazar la hipótesis nula. ¿Paco? Igual la condición también es estadísticamente relevante, pero, Paco, por favor. Pero solamente las condiciones con clítico y referente más animado y sin clítico y referente menos animado son estadísticamente relevantes y entonces podemos rechazar la hipótesis nula. Además de similar, la frecuencia de respuestas por condiciones es estadísticamente significativa en todos los dialectos. En Buenos Aires, Ciudad de México y Madrid. Por favor, Paco. Bueno, además de la prueba de chi cuadrado, ejecutamos un modelo de regresión logística binaria. Este modelo nos permite modelar decisiones, lectura imprecisa o lectura estricta, con variables predictoras como el clítico y la animosidad y establecer correlaciones más precisas. Asignamos 1 éxito para lectura imprecisa, sloppy, y 0 fracaso para lectura estricta, strict. Paco. Lo que vemos en bueno, hablando de manera sencilla, porque no somos estadísticos, lo que vemos en esta tabla es que, un ratito, porque no puedo ver toda mi pantalla, un ratito. Teniendo como referencia la presencia del clítico, la ausencia del clítico aumenta la posibilidad de lectura imprecisa en 4,38 veces. Considerando o tomando como referencia la animosidad, el rasgo de animosidad menos animado, el rasgo de animosidad más animado disminuye la posibilidad para lectura imprecisa en 0,31%. Sí, en 0,31 veces, es decir, 31%. ¿Sí? 31%. Paco, por favor. En este otro modelo tenemos como referencia la condición, es decir, el modelo nos da como referencia la condición clítico con referente menos animado. Bueno, entonces, si tenemos como referencia la condición clítico, presencia de clítico y rasgo menos animado, la presencia del clítico con rasgo más animado disminuye la posibilidad de lectura imprecisa en 0,22 veces. La ausencia de clítico con referente menos animado aumenta la posibilidad para lectura imprecisa en 0,68 veces y la ausencia del clítico con rasgo más animado aumenta la posibilidad para lectura imprecisa en 1,36 veces. Por favor, Paco. Voy a empezar la conclusión y puedes terminarla tú, Paco. Pregunta, ¿el rasgo de animosidad es relevante para la obtención de lectura imprecisa? Sí, el rasgo más animado bloquea la lectura imprecisa en la elipse de dp con el clítico y el rasgo menos animado favorece la lectura imprecisa en la elipse de dp. Por favor, Paco. Hipótesis, el rasgo más animado bloquea la obtención de lectura imprecisa en la elipse de dp con el clítico, pero no en la elipse de dp. Sí, en el primer caso, la presencia del clítico con referente más animado, la baja frecuencia de lectura imprecisa es estadísticamente relevante. En el segundo caso, es decir, sí, es decir, con la ausencia de clítico con referente más animado, la distribución de frecuencia entre lectura imprecisa y lectura estricta no es estadísticamente relevante. Es decir, que no se puede establecer una asociación, una correlación que sea de casualidad en la distribución de frecuencia de lectura imprecisa o lectura estricta en este caso. Puedes seguir, Paco, por favor.
Así. Bien, volviendo un poco a la introducción, estos datos claramente indican que ambos procesos, tanto de elipsis de sintagma tiempo y elipsis de conclítico, obedecen a diferentes condicionamientos sintácticas y no pragmáticas, ya que en ambos casos debería ser la misma pragmática, ya que en ambos tenemos antecedente que es animado. Sin embargo, elipsis de sintagma temporal elide todo, mientras que elipsis, hay una diferencia clara estructural, que el sintagma temporal lo elide todo, el verbo y esto, mientras que la elipsis relacionada con crítica es solamente el sintagma determinante. Y otro dato interesante que hay que tener en cuenta a la hora de concluir algo sobre estos datos experimentales es que precisamente el artículo que fue de muestra para empezar este experimento, que es el de Quer y Rosselló, utiliza los datos del catalán. Sabemos que el catalán, contrariamente al español, no tiene un uso extendido del marcado diferencial de objeto, y los casos que Quer y Rosselló utilizan para demostrar que es posible la lectura imprecisa con críticos son casos en el que utilizan objetos animados, como en 11, la Pampera estima la seva mare, en Joan també l'estima, donde la seva mare puede ser referida tanto como a Pere como a Joan. De nuevo, el hecho de que haya una diferencia paramétrica entre el español con marcado diferencial y el catalán, que no la hay, corrobora la idea de que esta lesión tiene su explicación en la sintaxis, por lo menos, y no en la pragmática, ya que hay una clara diferencia sintáctica entre el marcado diferencial de objeto en una lengua y no en el otro. No, la gran pregunta, y aquí voy a dejarlo en conclusión para seguir elaborando sobre el tema, es por qué la lectura imprecisa no es posible con un sintagma determinante conclítico en español, pero sí en catalán. Y aquí en el artículo que había trabajado con Sonia habíamos explorado diferentes respuestas. Un aspecto de la respuesta claramente tiene que ser lo que hayan propuesto muchas personas que han trabajado con el marcado diferencial de objeto, es que los TPs que están marcados con marcado diferencial de objeto están en una posición externa al sintagma verbal, opuesto a los sintagmas determinados que no. Y de hecho, Sonia utiliza esto para hablar del portugués brasilero, las diferencias entre animacidad. Y yo también soy entre. Y con lo que parece ser es que cuando el DP está fuera del sintagma verbal, no se puede copiar la dependencia de la oración en el caso del doblado con el clítico. En conclusión, el estudio experimental muestra claramente que hay una condición estructural, marcado diferencial de objeto, que hace que la elisión del sintagma determinante con clítico restrinja la variedad de lecturas posibles. Obviamente, más trabajos experimentales son necesarios para determinar todavía más las condiciones sobre lecturas imprecisas y los pronombres con lenguas que muestren que haya, como en este caso, vemos que hemos hecho una doble comparación. El caso de la elipsis del sintagma determinante con el elipsis del sintagma tiempo y ver estos. Y luego ha habido que no hemos hecho la comparación todavía de español con respecto al catalán, de que en el mismo caso no solamente es la animacidad, es el hecho de que la lengua haya un mecanismo de marcado diferencial de objeto. Y gracias, creo que esto es todo.
Obrigada, Paco, Samara.
Gracias.
Parabéns pelo trabalho. Andrés levantou mãozinha.
Hola. No puedo no preguntar en este tema. Gracias, Samara y Paco, está buenísimo el trabajo. Son muy interesantes. Pero acuerdo con todo, bueno, de estadística no tengo la menor idea, pero no acuerdo con parte de las conclusiones. Porque sloppy readings para testear elipsis es un test muy débil, muy débil. O sea, hay bastante evidencia de que con anáforas profundas, con pronombres, uno puede tener sloppy readings cuando esos pronombres se interpretan como laziness pronouns. Entonces, la sloppy reading no es un test de elipsis concluyente. Yo, o sea, lo que me parece que está mostrando el experimento es que cuando tenés elipsis del TPI, tenés elipsis, y en los otros casos tenés algún pronombre de laziness o algo por el estilo. Eso no va. Yo creo que para ver si hay elipsis del DP, el mejor test para usar es si tenemos lecturas de tipo Q-readings. Del tipo, por ejemplo, Juan leyó 3 libros con un cuantificador y después decimos Pedro también los leyó. Si fuera elipsis, lo que deberíamos esperar son 2 tipos de lectura. La E-type reading, o sea que los libros son los mismos, y la lectura cuantificativa donde los conjuntos son disyuntos. O sea que los libros que leyó Pedro son distintos a los libros que leyó Juan, o Ana, o María, o quien sea. ¿Qué es lo que pasa en japonés, hablando de deletion of subjects? Es lo que pasa en japonés productivamente. En japonés si decís, 3 wizards came to see Sean, y después respondes en japonés, came to see Taro, too, eso se puede interpretar también como otros 3 magos distintos visitaron a Taro. Y eso es una prueba muy fuerte de elipsis. ¿Entiende lo que digo? Y yo creo, mi juicio preliminar es que no se puede tener Q-readings con críticos. No sé cuál es tu juicio, Paco, o Tamara, no.
No, bueno, sí, somos conscientes de que es la cuestión de las lecturas imprecisas es un punto de controversia, tanto en todos los casos de estudios de elipsis del japonés y del inglés. Y básicamente lo que me he dado cuenta mirando toda la literatura es que se ha centrado en decir, incluso Takahashi dice, bueno, es muy, muy complicado este tema, pero no es concluyente. Es decir, lo que estoy interesado aquí es en este caso, dejando de lado si es deep anáfora o es surface anáfora, es ver pares mínimos como del catalán y el español, o un caso versus los otros, para determinar si estoy estudiando semántica. Bien, estoy estudiando semántica. ¿Me entiendes? La cuestión es que quiero delimitar que lo que a mí me llama un poco la atención en la literatura sobre deep anáfora es que han dicho, esto es deep anáfora and let's forget about it. Yo creo que no. Hay que buscar qué casos de deep anáfora debemos mirar en un caso y en el otro para ver. Hay más sobre deep anáfora que lo que se ha dicho, esa es la idea. Sobre los E-type, que lo había visto también, y en artículo tuyo reciente hablas de este tema. Incluso en japonés, no en todos los ejemplos se daba el E-type, por lo menos en un artículo de Tomioka. Es un tema interesante, pero es tan sutil. Si ya era difícil hacer un experimento con estos casos, me imagino que con los casos de E-type, que parece ser un test muy potente, pero E-type, I mean, ok. Tendríamos que diseñar un contexto mucho más fuerte para verlo, pero sí. Sí. Pero no, sabemos claramente que este es un tema, nos metemos en tierras movedizas con la elipsis aquí. Ya, más.
Sí, está Rodrigo.
No sé, bueno, tengo un comentario. Desde el punto de vista experimental, pienso que sería interesante hacer un experimento en el que se controlara pares como Juan visitó a su padre y Pedro también. Juan visitó a su padre y Pedro hizo la misma cosa. A ver si en este caso de deep anáfora, del tipo do it o do the same thing, encontraríamos diferencias en relación con el rasgo de animosidad.
Exacto, es un buen test ese.
Rodrigo?
Sí, bueno, también, pues muchas gracias, muchas felicidades por la presentación. Yo tengo una pregunta muy puntual. Entiendo que la variable dialectal no resultó significativa, pero hubo diferencias, aunque no fueran significativas. Y pregunto esto porque aunque yo realmente no podría decir que ya soy un hablante característico del español de la Ciudad de México, para mí la lectura imprecisa es completamente imposible en los dos casos. Es mucho peor cuando el objeto es cuando se lida el DP. Cuando se lida el TP es perfecta en los dos casos y cuando se lida el DP es imposible en los dos casos. Y cuando el objeto es animado, es tan mala que le pondría 2 asteriscos. Es de esas construcciones que suenan espantosas, pero no sé si eso se reflejó en alguna pequeña diferencia, aunque no fuera significativa.
Gracias por tu pregunta, Rodrigo. Muy buena pregunta, porque yo diría que los participantes hablantes de español en México son como que más conservadores, es decir, que no aceptan. De hecho, no existe una diferencia estadísticamente relevante, pero me parece que aceptan muchísimo menos que los hablantes de Madrid. Por ejemplo, los de Buenos Aires y de Madrid. Los que más aceptan, me parece que son los de Madrid, pero los de Buenos Aires también. Ahora, los mexicanos mucho menos.
Me tranquiliza la respuesta. Muchas gracias.
Sos un hablante de México, Rodrigo, entonces.
Creo que todavía soy.
Pero hagan de cuenta que está muy baja la frecuencia, ¿eh? Son 12 casos. Es decir, a veces por una cuestión pragmática, ¿no? Así de, bueno, que por la construcción del estímulo, ¿no? Que uno puede comprender como lectura imprecisa, pero hagan de cuenta que son 12 casos y tenemos muchísimos, 576 respuestas, es decir, que es muy poco. Es decir, que podemos poner ahí decir, desde el punto de vista descriptivo, como generativista, podemos decir que es considerada como gramatical o algo así.
Ok. Pelo tempo, obrigada, Paco, Samara, colegas, pela discussão. Vamos passar para o trabalho, a apresentação da Sônia Cirino. Sim.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about null objects today, but to something that I've been trying to start to think, which is the full pronoun in object position. And it was nice to have Paco and Samara's presentation before, because I also touched upon this problem of strict and sloppy readings. But of course, we know that Brazilian Portuguese has lost third-person clitics, and then we have null objects or full pronouns in object position. But so when you look at an example like one, null objects may have antecedents which are either minus animate or plus animate, as 1A, a Lia comprou os vestidos depois de experimentar, which is okay, e a Lia chutou os rapazes depois de beijar, is awkward. But when you have a full pronoun, then both minus animate and plus animate are possible. A Lia comprou os vestidos depois de experimentar eles, e a Lia chutou os rapazes depois de beijar eles. So both are perfect. Now, in the literature, for example, Galvez, 2001, she proposes that given the properties of Brazilian Portuguese object full pronouns, and following Cardinaletti and Stark's proposal of weak and strong pronouns, she says that these pronouns, ele, ela, in object position in Brazilian Portuguese could be either plus strong or weak pronouns, depending on animacy. So plus animate would only be able to occur when there's new information, like in the sentence here, and the minus animate would be impossible because they couldn't convey new information. Now, additionally, null objects allow strict and sloppy readings, but full pronouns do not in Brazilian Portuguese. So when you say ontem o Ivo pôs o anel no cofre, mas Pedro guardou If you have a null object, then it could be either Ivo or Pedro's ring. But if you have ele, it can only be Ivo's ring. So we just have the strict reading. Now, it has also been observed, as we have just seen with Paco and Samara, that not only VP or DP ellipses allow strict sloppy readings, but also certain overt object pronouns. For example, it in English, like in paycheck sentences that I translate here as for ele. I mean, this is the classic example, right? The man who gave his paycheck to his wife was wiser than the man who gave it to his mistress. This paycheck could be either the mistress or the wife. And in Portuguese, we have the prepositional clitic o. O Pedro quer ganhar a loteria, mas a Maria não o quer. I mean, European Portuguese, where they still have this prepositional clitic. And then this clitic has both strict and sloppy readings. In Catalan, as just seen by Paco's and Samara's talk, Quarezemin says that they could have strict and sloppy readings, and in Spanish, and propositional clitics also in Spanish, o and lo, could also have strict and sloppy readings, as we see an example here with o. And also mixed readings. This is Quarezemin, that's what they report. In English, we have the prepositional clitic it that also can, in sentences like this, John wants to become president and Mary wants it too, then we would also have a strict and sloppy reading, according to Kierke a long time ago. And then in third person clitics, we have Catalan, we have just seen this, right? And then here has an animate antecedent. In Spanish, we have these strict and sloppy readings according to what we have just seen, but then we have an inanimate antecedent. But also in languages like Slovenian, clitics have been reported to allow clitic and sloppy readings, and Serbian, Croatian as well. So the goals of my talk today is to try to explain, and this is just the beginning of this idea, why objectful pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese have these two properties, which is contrastive focus is only possible for plus animate pronouns, and why they lack strict and sloppy readings. So I'm going to present this in two parts. Part one, I'm going to focus on the strong versus weak pronoun in Brazilian Portuguese. Part two, on the lack of strict and sloppy readings for full pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese. So the question is, what are these full pronouns? Can we use the strong and weak partition for Brazilian Portuguese full pronouns? This is the classic work by Coordinadores and Stark, who says that strong pronouns must refer to new information, focus, and deficient pronouns are anaphoric. Animacy seems to be a property relevant for the strong-weak distinction proposed by Coordinadores and Stark, because they say that strong pronouns cannot refer to minus animate antecedents, but weak deficient pronouns can refer to minus animate antecedents, but only when they are prominent in discourse antecedents, so they are referentially deficient. Now, as I showed before, Galvez proposes that in Brazilian Portuguese, full pronouns in object position may be either strong or weak, depending on the animacy feature that they have. So one example is that she gives is that in object position, they can be considered strong pronouns because they pass testhood for stronghood. So they can be contrastively focalized. So you can say, eu vi ele e não ela, referring to Pedro and not Maria. But you cannot say, eu vi ele e não ela, referring to a book and not a magazine. So that, according to Charlotte, this is what makes this distinction. Coordinadores and Stark says that what appears to be a single lexical element, for example, loro in Italian, has in two distributions. They can be weak or strong. Galvez does the same thing because she says that full pronouns in object position share the same morphological form and have different distribution, but then with respect to animacy. Now, but the proposed stipulation that plus animate are strong and minus animate are weak doesn't explain, in my opinion, why there is this distinction with respect to focus. Manzini actually says that we don't need the weak, the strong divide for full pronouns, because independently motivated categories like case, focus may be sufficient to yield this attested distribution of non-clitic pronouns. So following her insight, I will try to show that distribution plus morphology is not necessary to account for the distribution of plus or minus animate full pronouns in object position. I will propose that the syntactic properties of plus animate properties, which are different from minus animate ones, are sufficient to explain the attested focus related differences. So we won't need this categorization of strong and weak pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese full pronouns. First, I begin by assuming Richard's analysis of the feature composition of pronouns, which I have proposed in 2016. Plus animate objects or full pronouns have a person feature, and minus animate objects or full pronouns lack a person feature. So the deficiency of minus animate pronouns in terms of referentiality follows from the fact that they are personless. They don't have any feature for person. And so they need an antecedent in discourse or context to get their reference. For example, ostension. And so here is the feature composition of pronouns. First and second person have a plus person feature. Third person animates have a plus minus person feature. Third person minus animate, and their plurals are personless. So Richards proposed that person is an exclusive syntactic property of animate and nominals. And inanimates will bear only number and gender features. So they are defective in the agreement system proposed by Chomsky. So animacy in syntax is the result of plus or minus feature checking. And actually animacy is very relevant for many syntactic phenomena. For example, differential object marking, verbal suffixes in languages like Blackfoot, double object constructions, agreement, person case constraints, and null objects in Brazilian Portuguese. So I try to think of animacy as a syntactic phenomenon. So what I would have said is that animacy expressed in syntax as the result of movement of a plus person or a minus person DP to the specifier of the functional category that has person and EPP features. This category is, I just call it F. And it's really it's positioned below VP and above inner aspect. And it's like a DOM, in fact, in Brazilian Portuguese, which is restricted DOM. We don't have DOM, but it is still alive in some constructions. So what happens is when you have a plus animate DP or a full pronoun, it moves to this position here. And when you have a minus animate, it stays in situ, and that's why we can have a null object, because here inner aspect, the verb in inner aspect can license the ellipsis. Now, what is my proposal in order to explain the possibility of focusing for Brazilian Portuguese plus animate full pronouns? Plus animate full pronouns move to this position outside a relevant VP phase, escapes transfers, and move to a higher position to check a focus feature. Minus animate full pronouns stay situ, they cannot be focalized because they are trapped inside a relevant VP phase and they cannot move further. More or less what Michelle said today, that we have to the blocking of these long passives in certain configurations. So I have to have some assumptions in order to have this working. One is the relativized approach to phases, like the one by Carney, where the relevant phase heads are little v and inner aspect. The other one is the phase impenetrability condition 2, where the domain of the phase head becomes inaccessible at the point where the next phase head is merged, and the lower left periphery for focus, as has been proposed by many people. So the proposal is that by Peak 2, before the next phase V is merged, inner aspect is not yet a phase. So this category here can probe to check its feature or value its feature. And so the ELI, which is plus animate, raises. So after the inner aspect phase is merged, movement of ELI is possible. It can take place before the next potential phase head is merged. Crucially, according to this Peak 2, V will only be a phase when the next phase is merged, which is C. So ele plus animate can be probed and move up to a low focus head. This has the result that ele plus animate can be focalized and even move further to C. So this is the idea here. You have the a first spell out domain after V is merged for an aspect. So ele moves here. This is not a phase yet. It will only be a phase, and so it moves here, right? And then it can move up here because this will only be a phase when C is merged. Now, this explains why ele minus animate cannot be focalized, because then it's trapped inside this V inner aspect phase here. And ele plus minus animate may be elided as well. Maybe we may have a null object here because by the same token it's there, and it may be elided as this stage of the derivation. And ele plus animate, on the other hand, cannot be elided because it moves up, and when it's here, this has all, and when V is merged, this is a phase, so it cannot be. It's outside the phase already. It's outside the complement of the phase head. Now, what about the lack of strict and sloppy readings for full pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese? As I've shown previously, different from null objects, object-full pronouns do not allow strict and sloppy readings regardless of their animacy feature specification. So you can have a plus animate, ela here. O Ivo viu a professora no cinema, mas a Lia viu ela no mercado. Could be only Ivo's teacher, not Lia's teacher. If it's minus animate, the same. O Ivo pôs o anel no cofre, mas o Pedro guardou ele na gaveta. It's just Ivo's ring, not Pedro's ring. So this is an interesting property if we compare them to elements that allow strict sloppy readings, as we have seen before, null objects, third-person clitics, propositional clitics, paycheck pronouns. So I hypothesize that full pronouns and clitics have different structures. Plus or minus full pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese are merged in a dedicated position, which is spec DP, following Giusti 2001, and this precludes them from allowing strict and sloppy readings because they are in a position where they wouldn't be able to either license the ellipsis, or they are too far away from a little pro if this was the case. Third-person clitics, on the other hand, are in D and then can be elided and give rise to strict and sloppy readings according to the paper that Paco and I wrote. So, assuming Giusti, full pronouns in Romance underwent a morphological reanalysis from demonstratives. So both the demonstratives and pronouns check their features in the same position, which would be the spec DP. And full pronouns are DPs in the specifier of another DP. And so they are DPs in the specifier of another DP. Here we would have the article or the clitic according to Giusti. According to her paper, from Latin to Romance, there was a reanalysis of the demonstrative ile into a full pronoun, a morphological reanalysis of an element with features that had these properties here, the demonstrative, into an element that have almost the same properties here. So she has a story for that. But what I would like to think or hypothesize is what happens in Brazilian Portuguese, because ele appears in object position when we lost the third-person clitics, right? So I've hypothesized in this paper some years ago that this replacement was possible because given that causative and perception verbs have either inflected or uninflected infinitives as complements, for example, if we have a sentence like o professor mandou eles, you can say eles apagar o quadro or eles apagarem o quadro. So here we would have an embedded subject with a nominative case. And given the possibility of sentences like 19, o professor mandou o menino apagar o quadro ou mandou ele apagar o quadro, where the morphological the morphology of the inflected infinitive here is 0, and given the impoverishment of agreement morphology in Brazilian Portuguese in general, as Eugenia showed this morning, this is probably very frequent sentences. O professor mandou o menino apagar o quadro, mandou ele apagar o quadro, could be the source of this novel use of a full pronoun and object position. So in order to explain the strict, so this would be the source of ele, right? And in order to explain the strict and sloppy readings of this third person clitics in Spanish, we have assumed that this would be a possible position, a possible structure for clitics. Clitics are always doubled, but in one instance it would be elided, and then the loss of third person clitics and appearance of objectful pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese would be, we lost the clitic here, then the replacement by ele would be the next possible replacement of an element in available structures for pronouns. That was its DP, which was higher in the structure. And this step precluded the possibility of ellipses and licensing of the whatever was here in the complement of D. So how much time do I have? I mean,
7 minutos, Sônia.
7 minutes. Oh, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm ahead of time. So my conclusion is that the aim of this talk was to try to explain these two properties. Maybe they are related or maybe they are not related. We have to think about this. So there is a contrast related to animacy in certain constructions because only plus animate full pronouns can get contrastive focus. So my explanation is that these pronouns move out of VP and then being that position, they may be able to be focused. Minus animate pronouns do not move, so they stay down there, they cannot be focused. Now, these pronouns do not allow strict and sloppy readings as opposed to third person clitics because they have a different internal structures due to this historical diachronic change that Brazilian Portuguese has underwent. So here is just a repetition to answer one. I showed what happens, right, with the pronouns, with the full pronouns, depending on the animacy feature. And to answer two, I assumed this structure proposed by Giusti. And that's it. Thank you. These are the references. So I think we have plenty of time to discuss.
Thank you, Sônia. Obrigada, Sônia.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes.
Paco?
Thanks, Sonia. Obviously, I agree with your conclusions. And it's interesting, this whole literature. I mean, the issue that you're bringing here with demonstrative, which is very interesting, which demonstrative not allowing sloppy readings, which makes sense in this respect. And particularly with the paycheck sentences, which are the typical examples that you provide. Usually the paycheck sentences come with it, not with a demonstrative, which from this point of view is. Another thing that by looking at these things that I was wondering about is what happened with animus in English, with him and her as being sloppy or not, but I haven't found anything. But I assume that in Brazilian Portuguese, the demonstratives work differently, for what I can see from here.
Yes, I mean,
for person demonstratives like esa or aquella.
Works with respect to
with inanimates. So you say that car, you say
este or aquele.
Okay.
And mesa, which is feminine, is esta ou aquela. And yes, then of course they can only have strict readings when we use them. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that the adoption of just the analysis makes sense from that perspective.
Yeah. I guess so, and also because, I mean, then the reason would be that also they are too far away to license. They are in the specifier position and not in the head of this DP that, according to our story, would license. I mean, maybe not ellipses, maybe it's a small pro like Uriagereka and other people a long time ago proposed for this structure of the clitic, and then maybe it has these different properties because of that. It's not really ellipses, it's just like a pronoun. I don't know, I haven't really thought about this more deeply.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes. Who is this?
Just an empirical question. Samara.
Samara. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Just an empirical question. In my Caraca dialect from Nilópolis City, we can say something like, cadê a farofa da Nicinha? Esqueci ela. Esqueci ela em casa. Esqueci ela em casa. E a caixa de cerveja? Deixei ela em casa. In this case, what would be the full pronoun in this synthetic context? What would be the nature of the full pronoun? Esqueci ela, esqueci because it's less animate.
Yes.
Farofa.
Yes, but according to my idea, you can have pronouns, minus animate pronouns in object position. The difference is that they cannot be focalized. And then my story is because they are inside VP, so they cannot move out. But you can have so what the variation is studies show is that the null object occurs more frequently with inanimate antecedents, and the full pronoun more frequently with animate antecedents, but doesn't preclude them from applying or appearing with inanimate antecedents as well. But because you cannot use a null object with inanimates, then with animates, I think that's why you have more animate full pronouns you have more plus animate full pronouns, but you can have minus animate full pronouns. But with minus animate, you can also have null objects, so you have another possibility.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Michele?
I have a quick question. Thanks for a really nice talk. Can you, is there also a restriction on like moving the inanimate pronouns? I mean, it seems that there is, right? So that also fits in with what you're saying. Did you have that somewhere?
I don't think so. I mean,
but you can certainly, an animate pronoun, you can definitely move it around yet. But the inanimate ones, I was trying to think of an example. It seems like maybe, I don't know.
I haven't thought about that, Michelle. Do you have any examples?
Well, you can easily say like, you know, ele não acho que venha or whatever, but you can't do that with like an inanimate, can you? Or I don't know, in the right you have to have the right context, I guess.
Like this is the examples probably. So if you have, for example, ele, você vai ler hoje.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Then yes, but you cannot move. You may not move out of familiar or shifting topic, because this is the paper that I was trying to.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, okay, so that.
No, you missed because I haven't showed it. This is in the appendix.
Oh, I see. Okay,
in case somebody asks this question.
Oh, okay, because it also follows from your analysis, right? Because it gets.
Yes,
kind of,
yes,
okay.
And also because according to Frascarelli and Hinterholz, there are different structures for familiar topics versus shifting topics. Shifting topics would be merged in the here, and familiar topics would be topicalization, and then, but then anyway, it doesn't help because it doesn't, you cannot do it with ele. Okay.
Renato.
Thanks, Sonia. Very nice talk. Very exciting. I have a question about something you didn't talk about. I'm going to be that person.
Hopefully I have it in an appendix.
Let's see.
The example.
So for the animate pronouns, they use this FP intermediate step of movement in order to leave the VP so they can be focalized.
Right.
You didn't say how inanimate full DPs can get to that focus position, because if they're inanimate, they don't need this. They can't do this intermediate step of movement, but they can go all the way up to the focus position, presumably in your analysis, right? So how do they escape the VP?
Yeah, I see the full DPs that are not pronouns, right?
Yeah, inanimate and focalized.
But can you do it? Deixei o livro. That's a good question, because I haven't read about this and I haven't tested this. But do you think we can do it? You are the expert in low focus positions.
Yeah, you can just contrast a DP or with the demonstrative, as Paco was saying, right? Eu não li esse livro, eu li aquele livro.
Yes, okay.
If you focalize aquele livro in the second sentence, in your analysis, it would be outside the VP. Right?
Yes,
but it can't go through this plus FP animate position, right? Because it's inanimate.
True. But but that's a good question, because maybe this is related to the structure of this VP, which may have a demonstrative. But yes, so probably two things may be related. But yes, I haven't really thought about that yet. Thank you.
Obrigada, Sônia. Obrigada a todos. Vamos passar, pela questão do tempo, vamos passar a apresentação da Silene Rodrigues.
Thank you, Sandra. Let me see if I can project my presentation. I think you have to allow me to do so.
Okay.
All right, let me see here. But that's it. All right, so first I want to apologize. Thanks for waiting for me this time, and I want to apologize for not being here before. I am protesting against AUFAL, so I decided to do my presentation, and that's about it. But so today I'll talk about bound pronouns, focus, reusing already transferred material. That's what I'm trying to do with bound pronouns. And the main question is, how can we explain binding using minimalist tools? So I've been thinking about binding for a while, since my PhD, and it's very hard to deal with binding within the minimalism. But what I want to do here is to try different ideas and see what I can get. I have a couple of different ideas, and today I'll show you one of them. I want to discuss one of them with you. So here is my textbook of minimalist, right? The computational system of grammar. So we have merge. It's a recursive combinatorial operation. It combines lexical selected from the enumeration. That's called external merge, and syntactic items from within the derivational working space, internal merge. We might say that external merge operates in all sets of features at once. So it takes a set of feature full item from the enumeration, put it in the working space, and internal merge cares about only about formal features. There is no other type of merge, as Chomsky 2013 says. Spell out transfer material from the syntax to the interface, and it applies multiple times, either spell out or transfer. Phases are structural chunks that are transferred separately to the interface, and they must be readable. they must be intelligible representation to the external systems. Phrase interpretability condition says that in a phrase, whenever you have the when you hit the head of that phrase or the next head, the domain of that head will be sent to will be sent to the interfaces, and it won't be available for further computation. So the mature within that complement is outreach, so we cannot reach it anymore and do operations with it. So the complement of age is not available for computations to on the next phase. A spell out and phase consequently increases computational efficiency and reduces the computational burden for narrow syntax and for the interfaces because it's more dynamic. Let me see if I can deal with all these things in front of I can't. So I have a lot of things here. Hold on, let me just move it here so that I can see what I'm projecting. Otherwise, I get lost on my own presentation. Let me go back here. So notice, however, that a complement of a phrase is not inactive after spell out. As if it were, we couldn't do, for example, VP and TP movement, right? Also, this kind of movement, VP and TP topicalization, for example, might not pass through the edge of its own phase. So, for example, it cannot pass VP movement, cannot pass through the spec of little VP because it would be too short movement, violating probably anti-locality. Here's another possibility. Can we remerge? Can we reuse material that were already transferred to the interfaces? And here is my working hypothesis. Yes, we can. External, what I'm calling external features that have a semantic and phonological import, can be recovered from the interfaces and remerged. Phrase interpretability condition constrains movement triggered by formal features only. An interpretable unavailable formal feature within the complement of an age, for example, as we see here, has to be moved moved to the edge of that phase in order to survive spell out. If this movement does not happen, the derivation will crash, as the representation will reach the interface, contain a feature that is offensive, that is untranslatable to the external systems. So formal features cannot reach the interfaces. Therefore, if something gets to the interface within a formal feature, that feature cannot be rescued because the derivation will just crash. Semantic and phonological material, on the other hand, should be available at the interface buffer. Nothing prevents the computational system from accessing and copying them, and you use them in the derivation. That's what I'm interested in here. If this is possible, it gives us displacements that are not subject to locality. These are semantic and phonological dependence that do not involve agree, probably. I want to think about that as applied to movement to theta positions a la Hornstein, including sidewards movement a la Nunes, okay? And I want to explore remerge as a possibility of explaining bound pronouns, principle B. So let's talk about bound pronouns for a while. I apologize. I'm gonna use a lot of data from the literature, especially English, some data from Romance. But you will be fully capable of judging this because you know a lot about pronouns in Romance, as Sonia just showed us. So we do have weak pronouns and strong pronouns. It happens in English as well. John thinks that Mary loves him versus John thinks that Mary loves him. This is discussed in Piang and Higginbotham, for example. And it has been said that one involves accidental co-reference or co-evaluation in Reinhardt's terms, which is arguably a pragmatic process. Two, a weak pronoun involves binding, which is a syntactic process, which is probably accounted for principle B in GB, or it's minimally substituted. In a full pro-drop language, for example, the same is observed. Weak pronouns as opposed to strong pronouns prefer within intersentential C commanding antecedents, therefore binding, while strong pronouns take intersentential non-C commanding antecedents, co-evaluation. So that's what you see in trace, When Carlo era Picciato, Antonio, Louis, Picciato Antonio, Louis era Ubriaco. So if you have a strong pronoun, that pronoun will refer to Antonio. And if you have a no pronoun, it will refer to Carlo. The same you see with Montalbati over pronoun constraint. Ninguém disse que era inteligente, for example, in Portuguese or in Spanish. That here you won't allow a strong pronoun, a weak pronoun has to be used. And also binding has preference over covaluation. Covaluation is allowed only when it leads to a different Aleph interpretation. So that's what, that's Reinhardt's work. So if you have, for example, only Lucy respects her husband, you're going to have two readings here. One in which her is related to Lucia and another one in which it's going to vary. So in this case, according to Reinhardt, a strong pronoun will be used because it can lead to a different Aleph. But according to Reinhardt, strong pronouns, they trigger a process of reference set computation, which we'll discuss later. So if you look at pronouns, strong pronouns, they are actually troublemakers all over. If you look at first language acquisition, for example, we see that strong pronouns show a delay of principal B effect, which weak pronouns do not, and this has been shown in a lot of different languages. Over and over, people have shown that reference of a strong pronoun is picked up randomly by kids before 6. And this is in accordance with Shane and Wexler's finding that quantifier antecedents do not trigger violation of principle B. So if you have something like look at the picture I have here, and if you have something, if you ask a kid, is every bear touching her? So you're gonna, in this context in which you have a quantified antecedent, kids offered the answers, they receive the higher number of expected answers. The answer is no, right? Now, if you have B, is Mama Bear touching her? Then here, the answer is expected and unexpected happened by chance. Maybe this is the fact that every bear does not have a discourse antecedent, therefore binding has to happen at a laugh. Binding has to happen at syntax. 6B on the other hand, since you don't have a quantified antecedent, binding can happen at pragmatics. Maybe this is related to working memory, as Reinhardt thinks. Due to working memory limitations, young children have difficulties dealing with strong pronouns. So they can't do with reference set computation on her proposal, right? Because it requires a high load of working memory. In second language acquisition, the same is observed. Native speakers of a non-pro-drop language experience difficulties in computing the reference of strong pronouns. Weak pronouns are fine. At least some work have shown that. And people have related also to working memory. Second language adult learners face a working memory load when dealing with strong pronouns. They have a hard time setting the reference of a strong pronoun within pragmatics. A typical language, for example, schizophrenia, has shown that pronouns are one of the main sources of difficulties in establishing reference. Work by Hinsen, all his collaborators, work of student of mine, Schabs. Tovar et al., for example, showed that with schizophrenic speakers from Catalan and in Spanish, that more anomalies were found within no pronouns. But notice that here, two things has to be said. One is that no pronouns, the distribution of no pronouns in Catalan and Spanish is much less restricted than the distribution of no pronouns in Portuguese, right? And on the top of it, I believe that Tovar et al., they did not look at third person pronouns only. They look all over the place. They considered all pronouns, and they found a lot of pronoun shift. For example, second person being used for first person or third person being used in the place of first person, which is common in certain schizophrenic cases. Chaves, this is a student of mine, Monica Chaves, she's still doing her PhD, but she completed her qualifying paper. She already did some experiments. And what she found is that within Brazilian Portuguese schizophrenic patients, a higher use of no pronouns. They use more no pronouns than overt pronouns, but they have more anomalies with overt pronouns than with no pronouns. So I'm giving you an example here. Sonhei que ela vinha e sentava nas minhas costas, mas ela ficava na paz dela. So what you see here in this, the person is reporting his dream, right? And you see that he starts talking about his dream with using the pronoun ela without giving you the referent of this pronoun. So that's what we're calling anomaly. So the referent of the pronoun is not previously set. Here you have you have two cases of overt pronoun with an anomaly and one no pronoun. I saw all these reports, and what I can tell you is that they start with an overt pronoun and then they can use a no pronoun, referring back to that no pronoun that has no referent. Right? So this is a very interesting case, and it corroborates the fact that strong pronouns are really troublemakers. Now, within syntax, we know that strong pronouns and weak pronouns, they probably have a different internal structure. Cardinalet and Stark, for example, Butsu 94, for example, propose that weak pronouns has less internal structure than strong pronouns. Within the minimalist program, we're trying to account for binding in different ways. I'm going to talk to you about three different analysis that we already have. For example, Chomsky 93 and Chomsky and Lasnik 93 assumes that principles A, B, and C are interpretative conditions that apply as a block at LF, and their arguments are based on reconstruction's effect. But these arguments are really weak because they are equally comparable with derivational approaches. That's some paper that I already wrote about it. And second, this analysis does not eliminate binding as a module, as the proposed version of the principles do not follow from any general property of the grammar, nor from any bare output condition. Hornstein proposed that bound pronouns are repair strategy. With pronouns and the Hornstein analysis are specific about weak pronouns are inserted by the computational system whenever movement fails. So they are repairments. So here you have his analysis, and the derivational step in B violates the left branch condition. Thus, in order to repair the derivation, pronominalization happens, replacing the lower cop with the pronoun his. This analysis is particularly motivated by the alleged interaction between pronouns, resumption, and lack of island effects. However, this is not clear that this interaction really exists. First, pronouns within relative clause in Lebanese Arabic, for example, show reconstruction effects. So assuming that reconstruction involves movement, Aoun was forced, for example, to assume that a covert movement applies. Interactions between pronouns and islands, melioration effects are not securely confirmed by experimental work. For example, all these people that I'm citing here, they have done work to check this and they couldn't have any significant finding. So it's not clear also that pronouns are inserted when movement are not allowed. Take parasite gaps, for example. Which article did you file without reading? But you can either have a gap formed by sideward movements or by an operator, or you can have a pronoun. And this pronoun can clearly be a weak pronoun. Which senator did you vote for without really knowing him? Another thing that this is something that I've been thinking about. What is the repair strategy? And I've been reading about it in biology, but I can't have a clear answer about a repair strategy. So what does a repair strategy means? Chomsky, 1981, proposed that it is a language-specific process. So it's probably, if you think about it within minimalism, you can think, well, like it's probably a PF phenomenon. Hornstein, on the other hand, takes it to be a general feature of the grammar. Pronouns are, but look at this, pronouns are super abundant. They are the elsewhere case. They happen everywhere, whenever you can have movement. Thus, to me, it's kind of weird to see them as the result of a repairing If so, the grammar has to do massive amount of preparations, which is kind of weird. So if it's such a common thing, how can the grammar takes it to be a repair? It should be more of a general feature of the grammar because it's so used by the grammar. So Kane has a different analysis. Based on Oregereka's analysis of clitic doubling, he proposes that pronominal binding involves forming an antecedent pronoun constituent followed by movement of the antecedent stranding the pronoun. That's what you have in this example. John thinks that he's smart. Interestingly, this proposal is interesting, but it might not be extendable to strong pronouns, contrary to Kane's suggestion. So Kane has this grandiose idea of assuming that all pronouns, weak and strong, they are formed by movement, by this clitic, clitic doubled constituent. Also, so if it were, we wouldn't have all the contrast I showed you involving acquisition and atypical language. Also, in order to be cyclic, the proposed movement proposed by Kane, the antecedent has to do improper movement. It has to move to the edge of each phase in order to move to the next higher phase. Also, it's not clear how the bound reading emerges as the antecedent and the pronoun do not share the same theta role. So Kane is against this idea that an element can receive more than one theta role. So is the fact that they form a constituent during the derivation enough to guarantee a bound reading? Heim proposed a different type of analysis in which he thinks that in the derivation towards PF or RLF, all features of a DP antecedent must be copied into the variable that it binds. It has problems with split bound pronouns as innate, as she discusses. And here is what I want to propose, okay? So I'm just thinking about it. It's my working hypothesis. It might be right or it might be wrong, but the question is, what can we do with it? So let's talk first about the internal properties of structure of pronouns. So different proposals are in the market. Albini, for example, proposed that pronouns are just intransitive Ds. They are just D. Hard and Harley and Heather, Heim, Rowland, Johnson proposed that pronouns are D, but plus 5 features. Others, like Panagiotidis, for example, take pronouns to be full DP, so they have all the internal structure of the DP. We will analyze them as DP formed by deficient D that takes an NP as its complement, Important here, it does not contain grammatical 5 features. So I'll talk about it more soon. So basically, my proposal is that weak pronouns is just a D that takes as a restrictor an NP, and this NP is its antecedent, is the NP of its antecedent. A strong pronoun, on the other hand, that's Panagiotidis' work proposal. They are D with an empty NP. That's like 1, okay? It has the semantic of 1. Weak pronouns are deficient. These they share the restrictor with this antecedent. Strong pronouns, on the other hand, are these that take an NP as its restrictor, an empty NP as its restrictor. The reference of these DPs is decided at pragmatics, where reference is coevaluated with one of the available discourse antecedents. This process requires keeping multiple discourse antecedents active in working memory. Hence, during performance, speakers with working memory limitations will have difficulties computing the preference of strong pronouns. Now, here's how I want to do something like, I'm sorry.
5 minutes.
Okay, I will do in 5 minutes. Believe me, I'll talk really fast. So take the sentence, Bolsonaro thinks that Trump's love him, in which you have a weak pronoun. So first you start the derivation with building the complement VP D Bolsonaro, right, as I propose. And then the derivation will follow, okay? So you will have, when you reach the phase, the VP phase, you send its complement to LF, the whole VP to LF as done here. And then when you build the subject of the matrix clause, you copy from LF the N Bolsonaro and remerge it into the derivation as done in here. I'm not going to go through it because I don't have time, but we can discuss it more during the discussion period. So here is a remerge process, but notice that this remerge process is putting a lexical item, a semantic material together with functional material. Okay, so you're not copying functional material, you're copying just semantic material. And then you end up with something like you have here. So you have Bolsonaro, Bolsonaro. So you do have Bolsonaro twice. And this weak DP, when it reaches LF, it's prominalized. Linearization happens at LF, and it's not an issue, given that the lower copy of the DP is prominalized. So, but here is some interesting things. Why do I think that DP's pronouns do not have grammatical 5 features? Because you do have a lot of mismatch. For example, in 10, 12, and 13, and 14, I'm showing you that pronouns do not really have to have all the do not have to match the number and person features of their antecedents. Gender either. I can say something like, a vítima informa que a polícia o deixou abandonado na rua, in which O is masculine, while a vítima is semantically masculine in this case, but grammatically feminine. So pronoun antecedent is something that is a case in which you see semantic feature agreement, but not necessarily grammatical agreement. Another thing that is interesting here is this question: is C-command obligatory in cases of remerge? So, for example, take sidewards movement. Sidewards movement, it kind of involve C-command because the higher copy, the copy in the spec CP has to C-command all the lower copies. The same seems to be true about theta rows. Well, in this case here, what I can tell you is that it seems, at least with quantified antecedents, C-command seems to be obligatory. Those are cases of inverse linking phenomenon discussed by Horns and Rowland. So my conclusion is, if an operator is involved, C-command seems to be obligatory. Let me close this so that we have time to talk more about this. My conclusion is that bound pronouns are very well studied syntactic semantic phenomenon. You know, it's not a pragmatic phenomenon, it's syntactic nature, and many different analyses have been proposed. Within minimalism, our goal and challenge, of course, is to account for it using general grammatical tools such as merge. Existing minimalist analysis that try to accommodate, to account for it using our traditional knowledge of move, you know, move as manipulating formal features, haven't been quite successful yet. And I propose to consider merge as possible to be detached from formal features. If you do so, remerge might be a possibility, contrary to Chomsky 2013, and it might be able to explain dependencies such as bound pronouns. So just a note here that anaphoricity in the nominal domain is not restricted to personal pronouns. See, for example, Jenks 2018 for an anaphoric definiteness in Mandarin. And I'm citing this paper because it proposes something similar to what I'm proposing here, not quite like, but similar, and it was a source of inspiration for what I'm doing here. So let me close and let me see what you think about it. Okay, you can kill me now if you want.
Obrigada, Silene, parabéns pelo trabalho, pela apresentação.
Sure, Eloisa, that's a good feature of you. If you are in the plateia, no one will be without a question.
Okay, but forgive me if it's out of tune. It's just I was wondering about your idea of having this sort of movement. So then what would restrict it? how would we prevent something? Because it seems so wide. Maybe it's something that.
Yeah, I guess it restricts itself. So I think it's a default type of thing. So why can we do it within the same phase? Well, because you don't have, you don't have an LF copy available. That's, you cannot do remerge because within the same phase, because, you can do merge. You can do internal merge or external merge. Second, why can we do it with formal features? Well, we can do it with formal features because formal features cannot reach the interfaces. If they do, they crash the derivation. So one interesting thing here, it can be done differently. That's my second, if you see a second talk of mine, you'll see that I'll do it different. But one interesting thing here is that you gotta play with semantic features only. You cannot play with formal features or anything. So only semantic material or lexical material. Functional structure is out of this. So basically, if you look at sidewards movement is the same thing here. You copy something from one space to another, right? From one substructure to another substructure, and you give that thing that you copied, you merge that thing with functional material. For example, case. You gotta, for example, if you do parasitic gap with sideward movement, you gotta revive the copy by assigning another case feature to that copy. So this kind of movement, they involve remerging the cop made with functional projection first before inserting it into the derivation.
Andrés.
Sí, eu acho que Mary, você tem uma pergunta? I have one. I think that Mary was first.
Pode ser?
Sim, Mary.
Selene, você disse que pronome é de, né?
Uhum.
É interessante que eu tinha proposto que japonês não tem pronome, que só tem forma de tratamento que, na verdade, é N, né? N, quer dizer, N. E o interessante é que não tem pronome e não tem artigo também, japonês. Então, o fato de não ter artigo e não ter pronome é um parâmetro só, né?
Ah, que legal. That's muito legal. Ô, Mary, me manda seu artigo, por favor.
Eu vou te pedir. Muito resumidinho, incompleto, né? Só em te mando, sim. Mas eu não sei se eu tenho o seu e-mail.
Não, eu te peço. Eu te mando um e-mail te pedindo ele. Isso é legal. Dá para olhar também em mandarim. Dá para olhar em mandarim o que acontece com os pronomes.
So, may I? Yes?
Sim.
Thank you, Silene. Great talk. I have to see the details. I think that indeed it would be very useful to check Japanese for many reasons related to what Mary said, but also to the fact that they have this type of MP ellipses and crazy readings with, they have this unrestricted type of DP ellipses, and maybe not casually, according to proposal, related to the fact that the language does not have apparently a big functional DP structure, right? So maybe Japanese would be. But my question is this: so, have you thought about the E-type readings of pronouns that looks like bound pronouns, but they are don't enough for and the like? But I think that your proposal will be easily extended to this type of phenomena in similar terms to Elbun and other people that propose that donkey anaphora and related phenomena are kind of eliding stuff. In your case, it could be a case of remerging material, right?
Yeah.
For instance, copy restrictors and
yeah. The thing with E-type anaphora, like donkey pronouns, todo homem que tem burro bate nele, né? Is there here is the problem with this analysis, Andrés, with remerge. How much material are you copying? You know, are you copying in the restrictor of the D? So in the case of donkey anaphoras, you have to do something like todo mundo que tem burro bate nele. That has to be, because it's not any burro. É o burro que é owned by someone, né? So how much are you gonna copy down there? You see, that's the difficulty. Is I think the main difficulty here is to understand what are you copying in the restrictor of the D. And in these cases, maybe we can do this because you are copying only N. So you know what I mean? So but the fact that you are copying only N means that you are copying the minimum you need to guarantee a bound semantics. But yeah, that has to be some, maybe.
And what that should be a problem for you? I think that in donkey anaphora you can, in many cases, you can rephrase the structure with the minimal N. You know?
Yeah, no, I think that in this case it would be just fine because if you copy, for example, if you assume that you're copying a full DP, then you wouldn't have a problem. You're right. Then you would have a problem because what is the full DP you are copying?
But you don't need to copy the
exactly. But in this case, in this specific case, it's just because I'm fighting with other case, but in the specific case, since you're copying only the predicate, let's say, the N, then you should be just fine. Yes. I think that more difficult are cases like everyone loves his kid. Right? Because what are you copying? Are you copying everyone or are you copying just one? The smaller ones are the hardest ones.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.